Abraham, Story of Faith. Theme: Faith. Verses: Genesis 12 to 22. Summary: Abraham followed God into the unknown and became the father of nations. Encouragement: God can do impossible things through your faith. Faith is never born in comfort. It begins where certainty ends. And few stories display that truth more clearly than the story of Abraham, a man who left everything familiar to follow a God he could not see. His journey, from promise to doubt, from waiting to fulfillment, is a testament that God can do impossible things through those who believe. Today, we walk through his story slowly, deeply, uncovering what faith truly means. 1. The call of God. Abram, then called Abram, lived in Haran, a place of stability, familiarity, and routine. He had land, flocks, servants, and a life already built. Then, God's voice broke into his normal world. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. No map, no timeline, just a command and a promise. Most people need details before moving, but Abraham moved because God said so. He gathered his family, servants, and belongings. He looked back once, then stepped forward, leaving certainty behind. This was the beginning of faith. 2. The journey begins. Abraham traveled across deserts, mountains, and valleys, far from everything he once called home. Every step was unfamiliar. Every sunrise reminded him, I'm walking without knowing what's next. But that is what faith often feels like, walking without clarity, but trusting God's direction. He reached Canaan, and God confirmed, this is the land I will give your descendants. But there was a problem. Abraham had no descendants. Still, he built an altar and worshipped. He chose faith over facts. 3. Tested by famine and fear. Faith doesn't grow in perfect conditions. A famine struck the land, severe and threatening. Abraham went to Egypt for safety. There, fear replaced faith for a moment. He worried the Egyptians would kill him to take Sarah. So he hid the truth. But even in Abraham's weakness, God protected him. He left Egypt richer than he came. Faith is not about perfection. It's about returning to trust even after moments of fear. 4. The promise repeated. Back in Canaan, Abraham stood under the night sky. God said, Look toward the heavens and count the stars. So shall your descendants be. Abraham stared at the impossible. Old age, a barren wife, no child. Yet he believed. And Scripture says, Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Faith is not believing when it's easy, it's believing when it's impossible. 5. The waiting years. Years passed, then more years, then more. No child, no progress, just waiting. Waiting can test even the strongest believer. Abraham and Sarah began to wonder if they misunderstood God. Sarah suggested something that changed everything: for Abraham to have a child with Hagar, her servant. Hagar bore a son, Ishmael, but this caused tension, jealousy, and pain in the household. It's a reminder, when we rush God's timing, we create our own storms. But still, God did not abandon Abraham. He repeated his promise again. Through Sarah, not Hagar, I will give you a son. Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Sarah too laughed when she heard it. They weren't laughing because they doubted God. They were laughing at how impossible the promise seemed. 6. A new name, a new covenant. God changed Abram to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai became Sarah, meaning princess. God establishes identity before fulfilling destiny. He gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision, a physical sign of a spiritual promise. Abraham obeyed immediately. Faith is not only believing, it's acting on what God says. 7. The miracle child. Then came the moment they had waited for. At nearly 100 years old, Abraham held a newborn son, Isaac. Sarah laughed in joy, saying, "God has brought me laughter." Every tear, every doubt, every long night of waiting finally made sense. Isaac was not just a child, he was a reminder that God always keeps his promises, even if he takes time. 8. The greatest test. Years later, God spoke again. "Abraham, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and offer him as a sacrifice." These words cut deeper than any sword. Isaac was not just Abraham's son, he was the promise. But Abraham obeyed, not because he understood, but because he trusted the God who had never failed him. On the mountain of Moriah, Abraham raised the knife, and God stopped him. A ram appeared in the thicket, a divine provision. God said, "Now I know that you fear God." Abraham named that place, "The Lord will provide." The test wasn't about losing Isaac. It was about proving Abraham's heart that God was his everything. 9. The promise sealed. God affirmed his covenant again. "I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars and the sand. All nations will be blessed through you." Abraham's faith became the foundation of nations, the lineage of kings, and eventually the path to Jesus Christ himself. Encouragement. Abraham's life teaches us, faith does not mean knowing everything. Faith does not mean never doubting. Faith does not mean a perfect journey. Faith means trusting God even when the path is unclear, walking even when you cannot see, and trusting even when you don't understand. Because the God who was faithful to Abraham is faithful to you.